I'm not sure if anyone's actually watched this live. The main reason I'm doing it is because I talked to my camera for a half hour. Got visibly more frustrated as it went on, and then for whatever reason, my computer just didn't save the video that I had just created. So I was like, "Oh, that's weird." If I want to say something, I should do it now. So, for people who aren't in the know, which is, I mean, if you are in the know, it's either because you're someone who edits on a Wikimedia project, you've read the blog post by Jake, the Medium post, or you've seen the Verge article, which I happen to be quoted in. I'm the person that said, why aren't they backtracking like hell right now? And there's a little bit more pressure because I'm live and I'm like, oh, wow, this is slightly more intimidating than I was realizing. So I'm just going to pretend that nobody is actually watching this. It says I have a viewer, but I'm not sure if it's counting me or if somebody is actually watching this. If anybody pops in, has questions, I'll look at the chat eventually. For now, I'll probably just look at the village pump thread and try to summarize it. So May 20th, we had a thread started at Wikipedia, village pump, WMF. I'll just kind of link it in the chat. So if people want to actually look at it, they can, because that's one of the big places where this discussion is happening. I think there's probably been a few thousand comments by now. And the first comment mentions that we had 6 engineering managers, software engineers, senior software engineers, and staff software engineers that are being laid off. And that some of these people had tens of thousands of edits and maintained critical community software, and that there doesn't seem to be a plan to maintain that software now. This starting comment by Novum Linkley mentions that a few years ago, there were some structural changes made to the wish list by a new product manager. And that, now I'm going to kind of go into my perspective. So the way the wish list, a lot of this kerfuffle has to deal with the wish list. So the wish list is kind of this place where people from the community ask for features that they need to do their work. And the way it used to kind of work a few years ago was that it was an annual thing. There would be banners, it had a lot of visibility because people would sort of like propose things, and then the most popular things would be worked on, which has some issues in the sense of there's a lot of things that have not really been looked at for a really long time. So sometimes it felt like you were pitting people against each other for what's the thing we need most desperately. And so, like, I kind of understand why they changed it to a year-round thing. And another thing that kind of happened was the whole dedicated team. And a lot of people like contact, which is why they were upset about it being dissolved. Because the way the foundation is kind of pitching this is that, oh, the wish list isn't working because not enough is getting done, so we clearly need to restructure. But there's two really big problems with that line of thought. One is that the solution, laying off people who are kind of making it work, is worse than the initial problem. And two is that this restructuring plan makes no sense. There's a lot of direct questions that haven't been answered. Someone asked, I think like last week, how are you going to compensate for those 10,000 worker hours by just having it be dealt with by other teams? The thing about making it no one's responsibility, the thing about making it everyone's responsibility is that it makes it no one's responsibility, right? And it just doesn't seem very realistic to expect that we will somehow get a better working process by giving existing staff more work and laying off the people who really understood the needs of the community, are really good at doing what they did. And something that makes this whole thing look extra bad is that people they conveniently laid off are also trying to form a union. And the longer this goes on, the more it's going to be hard for people to believe it wasn't about the union. Because that's just... because they've said it's not about the money. They want to make the wish list better. So if they want to make the wish list better, why are they insisting on this plan that nobody wants? Like they were even warned ahead of time by the Product and Technology Council that people would not like this. I don't know why they're sticking to this plan in the middle of public outcry. If it truly is about that, if people are just that out of touch that they don't see how it looks like, I don't know. But at a certain point, intentions don't even really matter. Like if you are hurting someone, and I mean this just in a general sense, like you can be sorry that you caused that hurt. It might not have even been your fault, really. Like, because I know this has happened to me a few times where it's like, wow, I don't think that's fair, but like, I can see that you're hurting and I care about that. And yeah. So, days ago, literally the first person talking about this, the actionable changes somebody suggested was undo the disbanding of Comtech. If the Comtech disbanding is not undone, then transfer those software engineers to other teams instead of laying them off. Free. Bring back the wish list yearly cadence. I feel like that's something people can disagree about. And then the last thing is refocus back on ranking of individual wishes. Focus groups can stay and Comtech can pick them, but it should not be the focus. The ranking should be the focus, and then multiple wishes in the top 10 happen to be related. And Comtech can quietly make that a grouping. Again, I'm not a fan of the ranking idea. Like, I understand that some level prioritization needs to happen, but I'm not sure this should necessarily be a top 10 thing. But I think that pretty much everyone in this conversation agrees And the foundation solution is not it. It is not it. And that it doesn't make sense. And the fact that they're not answering direct questions about how it would make sense and just sidestepping everything is not a good look. If we look at the solidarity petition, where people are agreeing to do some form of collective action, like strike, if the union calls for it, we are way past the point where people should have paid attention. Let me see. Right now, we're at 872 signatures, which is a lot by Wikipedia standards. Like, if you go to the main page, you'll see that we have 276,000 active editors. But that's anybody who has made an edit in the last 30 days, I think. And that one edit could have been someone vandalizing. That one edit could have been someone fixing a typo. When you look at our core community, something that tends to be fairly consistent in NWiki numbers is that we have about 5,000 people who make 100 edits a month and 500 or so that make 1,000 or more. And when you look at who participates in requests for adminship, which is how we typically elect administrators, like there's also admin elections that seem to happen about once a year at the past couple years, which is a slightly new thing. But the normal process is still requests for adminship. I did mine in late 2023. And I had about 200-ish people participate in that, and that's fairly standard, like upper threshold. Sometimes you'll get some that are only about 150 participants. So anything going to, we have 872 signatures is a lot. It's so much, in fact, that it's the second most supported proposal on Wikipedia ever. And we're 11 days into this. And another thing that shows that this is bad is if you go to signature, it's one of the 600s, let's see. I'm scrolling a bit too far back. All right. I'm looking for the one from Coding Horror. And they're the founder of Stack Exchange. And their signature 644. And they say, I will ask for my $1 million donation back with extensive legal support if I have to. This is some bullshit, and I have requested a direct with this call with the person responsible. That's the sort of thing you'd think they'd backtrack on by now, you know? Just that alone. This was a comment made 3 days ago. 3 days ago. I mean, honestly, if you look at some of the signatures, you can just tell that people are angry and that they don't understand this. One person, signature number 5. Let's see. How long have they been around? They have about 8,000 edits. They've had an account since 2017. And they say, this was unacceptable behavior from the Wikimedia Foundation, and I don't say that lightly. I'm willing to do what it takes to get them to reconsider these seriously awful decisions. There's a lot of people that directly mention how they don't support union busting. I will say that the foundation has stated a few times that they are following the law, which, I mean, you can follow the law and still union bust in practice, even if you aren't legally breaking anything. Firing people before they get to the point where they can, vote to unionize is one of the legal ways you can do that. But I will say that the CEO has said that, this isn't about unions and that she supports unions. But again, the longer this goes on, the more bad it looks from the this is totally not union busting angle. Signature number 20. We have someone with almost 50,000 edits that started editing in 2015. The Wikimedia Foundation needs to be better than this, and if they aren't, we need to actively let them know that we won't stand for it. Signature number 38, collective action or inaction is one of the few ways voices are truly heard. Signature 42, Foundation's response is not credible in the least. Signature 46, why do we let the Wikimedia Foundation stomp all over us all the time? Signature 47 is simply fuck this shit. Signature 49, there should finally be some action taken by editors. Wikimedia Foundation has recently made several decisions on communities without properly consulting them. And then there's a few other sentences. And now this happens. This is an extremely worrying trend. Wikimedia Foundation should learn that they cannot take unilateral decisions which concern the communities and its members without taking into account the opinion of the communities and its members. Signature number 51 is simply fuck to the fucking yes. Again, lots of signatures that simply say no union busting. Signature 58. This is a disgrace to the whole notion that I stand for. I've lived around worker strikes my whole life in a mining town, and if you ever expect me to side with the corporation, you are dead wrong. I'm frankly disgusted and appalled by the actions of the Wikimedia Foundation yet again, and I can just as easily go spend my time somewhere else, open sourced, without my contributions, included but not limited to hosting an archive team warrior, contributing code on GitHub, working on OpenStreetMap, and a whole other variety of projects that will help contribute to the greater good of society without meddling with the foundation. If the guerrilla open access manifesto has to be enacted, so be it. Get your shit together, Wikimedia Foundation. It's about damn time. I've never heard of this manifesto before. We have an article on it. It says that it's a document published and widely attributed to Aaron Swartz in 2008 that argues for transgressive approaches to achieving the goals of the open access movement through civil disobedience with willful violation of copyright and contracts that restrict redistribution of knowledge and activities that exist in legal gray areas. I'm not sure I would go quite that far. Honestly, my biggest concern with copyright are two things. But the main thing that a lot of people don't actually know about is the situation with ebooks. In that, when a library buys an ebook, it is a license. They don't get access to that ebook forever. They get access to it for a certain amount of uses or a certain time duration. And that doesn't happen with physical books. And when you think about how expensive it is for libraries to maintain and have wide collections, especially on the ebook side, I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's something that should just happen because it's a new format. I really agree with the idea of controlled digital lending, where it's you have a copy. That copy can be checked out at any time. And as long as, it's a 1-to-1 ratio, right? And yeah. Signature 62. We have somebody mentioning that they will take their bot offline if a strike is called. They also mentioned that the page views for May 22nd are borked, and that Comtech was the team that was supposed to be fixing page views. So, yeah. Firing Comtech was a ridiculous move. Somebody replies to this by saying, I don't think Comtech was responsible for that specific problem, but they maintained the tool that formatted and displayed the data, but that the data themselves was a process maintained by some other team. At least that's the impression they got reading Fabricator. Fabricator is the tech thing for Wikimedia. Or if you have an issue, you start a Fabricator ticket, and then if you hope and pray, it won't be addressed years down the line. Signature number 67. I don't sign this lightly. I have spent countless hours over 13 years editing this website. So have thousands of others, including several of the employees laid off. These people need to be treated as respected colleagues essential to the movement, not as pawns in corporate games. Withholding our effort is reasonable when such respect is not forthcoming. Number 77 had a response because that signature was the fourth coordinator for the June Good Article Reviewing Drive. So that's starting tomorrow. Honestly, I'm curious if anything's going to be happening tomorrow because June 1st is Brooke Viber Day. Brooke Viber is not one of the employees that were laid off with this, but there's a sudden departure for unclear reasons. It seems like it has a lot to do with the union because her last post to the mailing list was basically, I'm leaving my position, support the union. And she is one of the first MediaWiki developers. She got her own day from the co-founder of Wikipedia. It's one of those, this is a horrible look things. Because it's very hard to justify why, you know, something like that would need to happen, especially uh, when they coincidentally have such vocal support for the union. Signature 79. As an editor, pretty inactive this year, but active last year, who's dabbled in tech, it's been a long time of hope that only makes the disappointment hit harder. Anecdotally, I've been seeing concerns incredibly ignored, off the top of my head, from smaller things like sub-referencing implementation to the supermajority opposition to closing all Wiki News and the ensuing silence on the announcements talk page. Signature number 80, not nice, Wikimedia Foundation. Signature 82 says that they'll keep their colleagues in the glam sector informed. Signature 83 is simply, I cannot stand injustice. Signature 84, while the money flows in, the bureaucracy feeds itself. They will continue inshittifying Wikipedia unless a drastic response occurs. Signature 91 says this is a drastic step, but the Wikimedia Foundation has taken a drastically abhorrent measure. '94 says, I am ready and willing to take drastic action as a bot and tool maintainer. Something I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily know is just how reliant the projects are on volunteer labor. Like, even on the tech side, we have a lot of people who do really important things that they do completely free. Like, I mean, I've contributed like 38,000 edits. I'm an admin for free. I've seen some things. But like, yeah. Signature 97 says that the individuals laid off include some absolutely terrific volunteer contributors in addition to their work for the Wikimedia Foundation, and they deserve better than this. Very willing to take action or inaction in line with the wishes of the union. I've edited every single day for almost a year, but that may have to come to an end. Solidarity forever. Signature number 8. What was done by the Wikimedia Foundation here was wrong, stupid, short-sighted, and likely illegal. That's from Premeditated Chaos. She used to be an arbitrator back in the day. So, yeah. 133,000 edits. And I think they got started back in, like, let's see. $2003. Yeah. Signature number 99 just quotes an hardcover principle. Wikipedia relies on the input of volunteer editors to maintain and produce its content, including managing its dispute mechanisms. The time editors can commit to this is one of its most precious resources. Wikipedia cannot exist without us. As volunteers, we must show that we're not afraid to drop tools, walk away, and take a stand against the Wikimedia Foundation's increasingly blatant exploitation of all they take for granted. Signature 106 is someone who is a media wiki developer and says that they'd be willing to strike in both that sense and in an editing sense for NWiki. Signature 107 says that they were surprised to find out about this during their inactivity, and that Comtech is one of the best teams on the Wikimedia Foundation, and that this is disappointing and stupid. Again, a lot of people saying they wouldn't stand for union busting. Signature 130 says that my editing of Wikipedia has been sporadic as of late, so my signature will not be as impactful as that of others. However, I wanted to have on the record that I am willing to partake in any form of collective action in solidarity with the 6 Wikimedia Foundation employees who have now found themselves out of a job through no fault of their own. I've always supported any community-led effort to hold the Wikimedia Foundation accountable, and that's not about the change. The 135th signature is interesting in that it's basically a meme response. It says, Wikimedia Foundation go 1 year without making a completely brain-dead decision that alienates the community challenge. Impossible. Signature 150, the inherent lack of employer consultation and the termination of pre-union employees are gravely concerning, and the community is entitled to expect better. In-house counsel's explanation that no formal unionization request has been lodged is unsatisfactory because preemptive union busting is what is being alleged here. 158, what a terrible action the Wikimedia Foundation has done. Let's see. Any other interesting ones? 176 by Cremastra says the Wikimedia Foundation appears to have lost track of what its mission is too many times. This latest scandal is yet more evidence that the Wikimedia Foundation leadership is out of touch with what its mission is supposed to be, is tone deaf to the community's interests, and has goals and personal interests completely at odds with those of the movement as a whole. Signature 178 says engineers who not only listen but can act on the direct requests of the community is something that should be cherished, not just by the Wikimedia Foundation, but by anyone who loves Wikipedia. Signature 182 is another long-time Wikipedian, like from the early days. They have 450,000 edits. They have the fun username of Wizardman. I think John Oliver once made fun of the username on, like, it was some comedian at least, but it was during the whole Scientology debacle. And yeah, they were like, where people with usernames like this are making important decisions. But they've been around since 2006. And as I said, 458,000 edits. And they said that I've said on multiple occasions that if I were to ever truly leave Wikipedia, it would be a result of the actions of the Wikimedia Foundation. It happened once before, 2019. I only came back because I needed something to do during the pandemic. And I don't think a pandemic is going to push me back into wanting to help out a second time. The Wikimedia Foundation taking over NWiki stuff and being too big for their own good many years ago was the beginning of the end of what made the site work, and I don't see it getting any better. Let's see. Any others? Signature 188 says that which side are you on has always been an easy question. Signature 192 says disappointing but not at all surprising at all from the Wikimedia Foundation. Signature 197 says only when Wikipedia grinds to a halt will the Wikimedia Foundation understand the consequences of their actions. Signature 205 says unbelievable how out of touch management can be. Signature 208 says it's very disappointing that this is clearly necessary, but it clearly is, so here we are. I hope the foundation changes course urgently, and this was 5 days ago that they signed that one. Seems like I lost my few viewers. I hope it wasn't a personal thing and that they were simply out of time. Yeah, like, honestly, I'm not sure if I should just keep reading what people are saying on the solidarity petition or what. Maybe I should go back to summarizing what Village Pump says. I think I've made it clear how upset people are and how bad this is. I guess before I go back to summarizing the Village Pump thread, I should just say what the statistics are. They get outdated pretty quickly because more people sign before they can get updated. But right now, what things we're looking at the 854 signature, so it's about 20 signatures outdated, is that combined, the people who've signed have made more than 11 million edits, and that this is equal to about 89 days worth of all of humanity's edits to the wiki. That we have written a combined 49,000 articles overall. 55 administrators have signed. 3 of the 15 arbitrators have signed. 5 oversighters. 4 Wikimedians of the year. So I'm going to go back to the Village Pump thread and just kind of talk about that, I guess. Unless somebody joins in and they ask questions. Somebody said that they're ignorant of Wikimedia Foundation politics, but that they found this news alarming enough to pay attention and say something. There's a vital anti-plagiarism tool that isn't necessarily doesn't. They're basically saying what happens to it. And this person said that they think Comtech is one of the best bridges between the community and the foundation, especially in recent years. And to get rid of that at a time where volunteers really do need help from the foundation is a bad decision. Even if you're a skeptic toward everything Wikimedia Foundation related, that this is something you should be unhappy with and paying attention to. Barkeep 49, another big person I usually see in the mostly pro WMF side, said that it was a shocking decision in light of the current annual plan's volunteer support goal. It's done in a way that has a lack of answers for obvious questions the community would have. I'm very alarmed based on what I know, and that alarm is only magnified by people I trust and who I know the Wikimedia Foundation trusts, and the technical sphere like Novum and so on speaking out so strongly against this. Chaotic NB said that they also found it baffling that the Wikimedia Foundation would sever one of their strongest connections with the community and lay off employees with precious experience in that regard, especially given the suspicious timing. Again, the union thing, right? Someone pointed out that this new wish list restructuring thing is supposed to receive the same financial support. And someone replied to that with the same financial support, but not the same staff. That sure doesn't look like a positive thing. And then somebody replied that with, it also doesn't make sense. If it's the same financial support, then where are they getting the team members to use that support from? Are they reducing the team members assigned to other projects? If so, which projects? Further, why dismiss the community tech team who has institutional knowledge that would be invaluable to this project, rather than employees whose institutional knowledge is related to projects whose priority is being decreased? Finally, why is there a need to reduce engineering headcount at all? If anything, the Wikimedia Foundation needs more engineers, not less. See the entire grass fiasco. Oh boy. Yeah, the grass thing is something. And another person said that this is appalling. Thank you for bringing it to our attention, Novum. I'm with you on all these points. The community wish list survey was scrapped a few years back. I was willing to give the Wikimedia Foundation the benefit of the doubt. I cannot see these firings as anything other than a betrayal of the community. Again, this is what people were saying 11 days ago. 11 days ago! Yeah. And so people have kind of made it really clear that this doesn't make sense. And there's a lot of comments where the same thing is repeated forever. There's a whole section where people that is literally entitled "This is blatant union busting," where people discuss that aspect of concern. People mention some timelines and how convenient some of the timing is. One of the comments I wrote in this section was, "This certainly feels like union busting, which alarms me greatly." Especially, again, because most of the people laid off were trying to start a union. Apparently, it's not the first time that the Wikimedia Foundation has terminated people trying to be involved with this for no apparent reason. And yeah, they clarify later that they're talking about Brookfiber, which is the number 2 co-author of MediaWiki. It says that union members are afraid to speak publicly about any of this, including those laid off, since they're depending on severance pay. And this is something that, like, the US is kind of screwy on this way, because where I live in Canada, there are basic minimum legal standards for you are laying off long-term employees and you must give them this much money. And you can sign things to like negotiate that to be higher, but it's not I decided you don't need to work here anymore, and if you want severance you need to agree to these conditions type deal, so you can pay your rent next month. Honestly, I think the world needs less NDAs and not more. I see it as a human rights issue, because the idea that you can basically enforce someone's silence for the rest of their lifetime is really messed up, in my opinion. Like, people should have the right to talk about their former employer the way anybody else would. Like, I understand, oh, don't share stage secrets. But if it's something like, I worked this job and it was terrible, they should be able to say that. Like, I think that it's messed up that there's probably so many people out there just in general that are suffering in silence. And also, isn't the US on paper such a big, my freedom of speech? You would think, the NDAs would be one of those things where if you care about freedom of speech, you would we need less of these. We need to have restrictions on what these can be. A reply to this comment says that I'm sure the idea will soon be presented that the thought of we can get rid of some unionizing leaders had absolutely no involvement in this. I find that incredibly hard to believe. This was a layoff of a group of employees based on organizational reshuffling, and surely this would imply the involvement of some type of HR professional. I cannot think of any possible scenario where even a half-decent HR department does not take notice of this fact, and a responsible organization would have raised the alarm on how this would be perceived. It is glaringly obvious that the Wikimedia Foundation is interested in breaking the union before it can form. And that's what Egg Rule 97 thinks. And somebody replies to this where it does seem coincidental that this comes a week after Brooke was presumably terminated, who was literally the first Wikimedia Foundation employees and is responsible for a lot of the fundamentals of MediaWiki we still use today. Wikimedia Foundation does seem to be cleaning house of some very experienced employees. Somebody says, even if you reckon this completely amorally, if the Wikimedia Foundation continues down this path, while at the same time fundraising off the back of our work, that would drive many people to stop editing. I care about this wiki's reputation too. Standing up for what is ethical will not hurt our reputation. Lego KTN says something interesting, where they say, I will add that based on my past experience, staff work pretty hard to keep internal Wikimedia Foundation issues internal and only start leaking these issues publicly when things are really bad. Unfortunately, I think we are very close to, if not already at, that tipping point once again. I'm in full support of the union effort, and if the Wikimedia Foundation board and management are upset about this, they only have themselves to blame for reneging on past promises that could have diffused tensions long before it got this bad. I'll say I agree with that comment quite a bit, because, obviously, I don't work for the Wikimedia Foundation, but as someone who has occasionally heard certain things about what it's like to work there, it sounds like it's not necessarily the best place to work. And there definitely is a strong try and change things from within sort of social norm. Even I've picked up on that as I think, because I am a more prominent community member, right? I have occasionally, sort of, I guess, gotten the impression that people don't like it when you're loud, and they don't like it when you go to the media, and they'd really rather you try to change things from within because we're totally listening. And I have found that sometimes that listening can be literally ignoring you to your face. It's gotten to the point where, a lot of times I don't even see the point in engaging on one-on-one calls anymore, because it's I'm not going to get through to you. This is just going to frustrate me. It's going to, yeah. And also at a certain level, it's I know I'm not the first person who has said this. I know that I'm not the first person who has become increasingly jaded over the years. I have seen the nicest people on our Snap. I mean, I guess maybe I'm one of those nice people snapping at this point. I don't know. Like, I am very frustrated because it feels like some of these things are very, like, you don't have to. Some of these are very bare minimum type standards. And it's very frustrating to have people react as if they are impossible asks and that, oh, we can't do these things. And at a certain point, it just feels like they're excuses, and that isn't necessarily an accurate framing of the situation. Like, a big thing that these things tend to boil down to is the concept of fiduciary duty, where people say that they can't do things because of fiduciary duty. I looked this up earlier today. I mean, I'm aware of the concept in general, but I was looking about how this matters in like a crisis standpoint, right? And I came across this document from here. I'll just link it, but it's actually really interesting. And if you go and read this document, it kind of talks about what's a crisis. It says that some things can compound over time. A lot of Wikimedia Foundation issues are the type of thing that the community sort of has built up resentment about. And they tend to be the same types of issues too. And it says, regardless of the cause, crises have the potential to unleash a great deal of damage in a very short time. It says management is responsible for taking into account opportunities and risks. I would say that if I was on the board of an organization where a big part of our reputation is that we are the good guys of the internet, I would care a lot about making sure we walk the walk so we don't have public relations crises like this. Says some organizations have a tendency to sweep things under the rug or shift blame. Yeah, I've definitely experienced some of that. And it talks about headline risk. How would this look in the paper? Could we explain it? Could we defend it? These are questions that could apply to valid and perfectly legal strategies that could nevertheless give rise to political, regulatory, or reputational risk. Management should be prepared to answer these questions when asked by the board. If in an organization with a strong culture of integrity, consideration of headline risk should be automatic. That's what that paper says. And somewhere at some point it says that doing the right thing is often, the smartest strategy. So, I've never really been a fan of fiduciary duty. Means that we must do these things that completely destroy our reputation. I mean, again, not a lawyer. That's my perspective. But, And something some people have brought up is that they're not necessarily confident that this is even about union busting. That they think that the Wikimedia Foundation is just so out of touch that they honestly think this plan is a good plan for some unfathomable reason. Like, but even if that's true, a smart organization would realize what a bad look all of this is and backtrack. They would, because they don't want people to think that they're union busting if that's not what they're trying to do. And yeah. And there's a few other sections where people just throw out ideas but don't necessarily go anywhere. Like some people mentioned about the idea about disabling fundraising, but there wasn't necessarily strong support for that. It was just. So, our first response to this crisis, we got from someone named Sumon. And they said that they're the Deputy Chief Product and Technology Officer at the Wikimedia Foundation. I know that this has been really hard news for editors and staff alike, and I've shared a message with more information on the wishlist talk page. In short, we're already working with affected staff to expedite interviews for open roles, though this takes some time given some of the local regulations around the world. The human side is not lost on us, and we are doing what we can to support people through this transition. Support you would not need to give if you laid them off, of course. And, like, the foundation has dissolved teams before. They did not lay everybody off in order to do this. Like, there are ways to transfer people that do not involve laying them off and then rehiring some people, maybe, after you interview them. Because something people have pointed out is that there doesn't even seem to be enough open roles for all the staff. Never mind, roles that fit within their level of experience and stuff and what they focus on. All right, second paragraph of this decision, of this response. They say, I can also unequivocally confirm that this decision is not disconnected to discussions staff are having about unionizing or terminating staff who have participated in those discussions. We respect staff's right to have these conversations. As I shared in my original post, the decision about the contact team and the community wish list was made to help the Wikimedia Foundation more effectively address wishes by having more teams work on them. We ask that you judge the impact of this change based on how well and how many wishes we'll be able to support in the coming months. We share the latest statistics via our monthly updates. And first reply to this. One thing that would help to establish that this is in no way union busting would be to take good faith steps towards recognizing the union and entering contract negotiations as appropriate. Failing any demonstration along those lines, it's hard to take the Wikimedia Foundation statement at face value. Reply to that says Wikipedia's brand these days hinges on being the website that isn't evil, independent of anything else on this page. And engaging in good faith is an excellent way to ruin that image. And then I even commented where I say that this is the first time I've seen something focused on the community be dissolved and how it sends the completely opposite message. Someone says, sorry, but we've done this too many times with too many empty implications. Somebody else says, I've worked for enough companies to know that it's possible to unwind a team by transitioning those employees directly to new roles rather than firing them, and then expediting interviews for new positions. Somebody says that the sentence where he says the decision about the contact team and the community wish list was made to help the Wikimedia Foundation more effectively address wishes by having more teams work on them makes no sense. Firing an experienced team does not get more work done. The effective way to get more things done is to hire new people and train them by the already experienced team members. Somebody says that this is the second time that the Foundation has asked for the community to judge them on results after major disruptions on the wish list, and the community reacted to with alarm. I certainly believe you that it's not about saving money, but what I don't believe is the same number of resources will go to progress on the wish list moving forward. I don't believe this because you haven't explained how that will be true. This lack of partnership with community bodies ahead of this change to a program like PTAC. Actually, they did have partnership because PTAC has said that, they warned them that this wouldn't go well. Makes it hard for me to believe you're actually interested in being held accountable for the results. And then a reply to that comment says, it's also kind of gross. I'm sorry, but there's no more polite way to put it. To justify people losing their jobs of, we had to do it because the community just wants too much stuff. And another reply to that says, yeah, I sure love being implicitly blamed for people losing their jobs. And then somebody else wrote, before I sign off for the night, I just want to stress, even if the Wikimedia Foundation is somehow able to provide conclusive evidence that this isn't union busting, which would basically have to be evidence that it was a set-in-stone plan agreed upon, not just tossed around as a possibility, long before the unionization began, and that the plan always involved laying off the whole team rather than reassigning them, and that no discussions of the layoffs involved any mentions of anything union-related. That wouldn't change the necessity of community solidarity with the union, because laying off a whole team of experienced and productive engineers for opaque bureaucratic reasons is exactly the sort of bullshit that is making employees want to unionize. If the Wikimedia Foundation's defense is we're only shitty employers, not union busters, that wouldn't be much of a defense. Reminding everyone that part of the union's focus areas explicitly include preventing unclear or inconsistent hiring, firing, and promotion practices. Another comment. Absolutely none of this explains how firing 6 people with direct experience in this area can possibly increase productivity in this area. Why not move them to the other teams? Surely their experience would be invaluable to those taking over the responsibility for something that they haven't done before. I've worked with 4 businesses and corporations, both large and small, for decades. Yet I've never seen this happen before. Repeating statements that don't make sense doesn't change the fact that they don't make sense. And there's a little bit of discussion about how this page is so long that it's causing some technical issues because of how long it is. People discuss how, the union hasn't actually said much since, that we're waiting for more information. We have a statement from Stephen Laporte, where he says there are several questions emerging about how the foundation is approaching the current conversation about unions, and I wanted to address these questions directly. Respect the right of our staff to unionize if they vote to do so. As of this writing, Foundation leadership has not received a formal request from any organization to be recognized as a union representing US-based staff. In order to lawfully recognize and negotiate with a labor organization, an organization must represent at least the majority of eligible staff members. In the US, that is typically determined by the outcome of a secret ballot election conducted by the National Labor Relations Board. If eligible staff members do reach the 30% threshold required under US law to request a vote to unionize, the Foundation will respect the legal process. No such vote has been requested at the Foundation. Respect the rights of all eligible staff to vote, and if the majority of eligible staff vote in favor of representation, we proceed to negotiate in good faith. And one of the replies to that was, so why did you stack incredibly dedicated and super talented developers? Stephen is legal counsel and probably was not consulted about the wherefores, is a reply to that reply. Somebody says that his message was purely about the legal aspects of compliance with the National Labor Relations Act of 1935. And also how there's a difference between, the legal standpoint of things versus the moral one. And someone says, on that note, pressuring the board would probably be infinitely better than trying to pressure even the top lawyer, as they usually don't decide on things like that. Somebody says it's a bit hard for them to vote if you keep firing them. If eligible staff members do reach the 30% threshold required under U.S. law to request a vote to unionize, the foundation will respect the legal process. What a delightful if. I imagine it would be rather hard to count towards that 30% threshold if one is no longer employed for whatever reason. Another comment. So essentially, we'll respect the process once we're required to do so. That feels very much the bare minimum, especially if you fire pro-unionizing staff before such a process could officially commence. We got a short discussion about reforming the Board of Trustees that didn't go that long. We got someone confused about what this massive thread was about. I'm just going to quote myself. I'd imagine it's a fairly subjective opinion, but I've personally found that the Wikimedia Foundation employees with extensive community experience tend to get certain things more and not propose things that would make volunteers riot. But I've also met some employees who are very new to the movement, yet very enthusiastic and eager to learn. I can understand the desire to generalize certain experiences and trends, but I see this more as a failure on management's side than on individual employees, especially from what I've heard about what it's like to work at the Wikimedia Foundation. Then there's a little bit of back and forth about how we can be somewhat intense and civil as a community sometimes ourselves. We talk about some of the other scandals, and I say that, part of what makes support so strong and vocal in this circumstance is that when it came to the legal landscape of other countries, people might give the foundation more knee-jerk benefit of the doubt than they would in this situation where, we've all heard corporate speak about restructuring. I also said that after a certain amount of broken trust, people just stop giving the benefit of doubt entirely. There's also some comments about how someone losing their job is sort of incivil by itself, like choosing to not employ someone. Lots of back and forth about what civility is. We have confirmation from Stephen again that they are nicer than most tech organizations and didn't immediately lock out all their employees from their system, and that while the employees have been laid off, they're still technically on payroll and stuff. Which, again, is another reason I'm confused, that they are just not backtracking hard on this decision. Because, you know, if they're still in the system, it's a lot easier to be like, hey, we're not laying people off anymore. We've decided, you know, this is a bad idea, a really bad idea. And, like right now, we have received confirmation that like 2 of the 6 people have technically been rehired. But pending any sort of other outcome, the other people will still be laid off. And I feel bad for the employee that had to cheerfully share the news. Hey, there's been an update on this. Because it's not what people want. Like, the bare minimum is giving people their jobs back at this point. I think there should also be something done about beyond DAs that they were probably involved in, where they're still allowed to get their severance, but also to speak freely. Because, I mean, the only difference between those two things is whether we know about that money being given out, really. So, on the 22nd of May, we got our first response from Selena. And it said this. Hi, everyone. My name is Selena Deckelman, and I am the Chief Product and Technology Officer at the Wikimedia Foundation. I've been watching and reading this discussion closely this week. First, I want to address what is happening with the staff affected by this change. As Suman mentioned, we are actively interviewing staff who have expressed interest in other open roles, and they are going through an expedited internal process. This is not a change. It's something we started right away when each staff person was told individually that the team was being disbanded. This process, which is sometimes referred to as redeployment and is legally required in some countries when roles are possibly made redundant, takes time because of different regulations, but we're trying to get these processes completed within the next week or so. Second, it is clear, as it always has been, that the community cares deeply about the wish list and sees it as a primary vehicle. Some see it as the vehicle for having editor needs listened to and addressed by the foundation. Volunteers have also historically looked to staff size of that team as an indicator of how much it is a foundation priority. Interesting that you bring that up. Well, I don't agree with this point of view. Those who have noted here and elsewhere that at various points in the past, other foundation teams have not balanced wish work with their regular work are not wrong. Regardless of what you think of the proposed version of the wish list or the decision to disband Comtech, I think all of us agree on one thing. The wish list hasn't been working well. I would really like it to, and I'd like to do it with editors. I understand and hear that many of you have felt closed off from the decision-making about how the wish list process works the past several years. It's time to change that. I don't have any big proposals today, but an intention. I'd like to hear from you. Here is fine. Individual conversations with me or my staff also work about how we might build a new wish list that works for both editors and the foundation. Staff are going to pause on responding for the next few days. And I'll check in again early next week. Thank you all for caring about this so deeply. Yeah, and it's, the standard corporate platitude thing, right? So I'm going to talk about the response to this on Meta first, because this message was posted in 2 places. So I'm going to link that in the chat too. So we have a reply from Jimmy. Says I think it's high time that the Wikimedia Foundation prioritize community needs, even when it requires restructuring how we do the work. We all know the old way wasn't working. I support the change. The hand-wringing over this, which is coming from the assumption that this means a turn away from community means, is mistaken at best. And then Tamsin replied to this by saying, by the change, do you mean just the decision to not have a dedicated community tech team, or also the decision to lay off the 5 engineers on that team, even though the logic of disbanding the team would suggest that their efforts are still needed elsewhere, at a time when most of the team members were engaged in pushing for better working conditions at the foundation? Do you have any response to the characterization from many current and former staff of the foundation as a place where expressing dissent from management's views is often met with censorship or termination? Never comment. Thanks for the comment, but I think people are also worried about something bigger than the wish list itself, Wikimedia Foundation's relationship with its own staff and with community's feedback. I've spoken with multiple former staff members who described a culture where criticism of leadership decisions was not welcomed, where community requested priorities were often ignored in favor of top-down plans that felt disconnected from what editors were actually asking for. Some also described fear of speaking openly about these issues. Could you please respond to these concerns directly? I also think you should understand why many community members are struggling to trust Wikimedia Foundation leadership statements right now. Over the years, we've repeatedly seen core community-facing initiatives weakened, restructured, deprioritized, or left without dedicated maintainers. I can show a lot of examples, while being told the new model would work better. So when people hear "trust us, this will improve things," skepticism is a completely natural reaction from a community that has seen this pattern before. Another comment. The main question the community has had so far is why you laid off 6 people who seem to have been good at their jobs and were doing important work. You've written 5 paragraphs here and you still haven't explained that. You, like Suman, are trying to reassure us that these people may still be given new jobs. This is a situation entirely of your own making. These engineers could have been transferred to other teams, like the teams that you claim will take responsibility for wishlist features. Even if some bureaucratic or legal quirk required you to technically lay them off for some reason, that would not take the form of an unexpected round of layoffs and then an offer of interviews with no promise of rehiring. There are 2 ways to read the situation from where I stand. One is that you dislike that some or all of these people were trying to unionize. The other, per what Namalis is saying, is that the Wikimedia Foundation has an institutional hostility towards dissenters, freethinkers, and valuable members of the community, which naturally guides it in the direction of terminating people who just happen to be involved in the union. I honestly think the latter would be more damning. The former would just be petty corporate bullshit. The latter suggests fundamental inability to run an organization in the interests of its volunteers and donors. Because time and time again, the Wikimedia Foundation is firing the people who try to make it better. If you want to convince the community that you're not full of shit, the fix is easy. I mean, probably not easy administratively on your end, but easy conceptually. We should have reassigned these people instead of laying them off. They've all been given new job offers with apologies. We'll make sure we'll communicate better with team members in the future when reorganized teams. Offering anything less than that is an insult to our own collective intelligence and an added insult upon the injury you've already done to the people you laid off to cover for your own incompetence. Do the right thing or quit pretending you care. Reply. +1. If employees were laid off for budget or performance reasons, then own up to that. If they weren't supposed to be laid off, don't lay them off. Dissembling wins no confidence. Another person asks, are there even enough open roles to take these people? Which is something that people have brought up before. Also a question that nobody from the foundation has answered yet. I want to amplify A. Silvering's point here that Wikimedia Foundation leadership was apparently totally unprepared for this to be a major issue for the community speaks to a completely different problem. We value this team and these employees not just for coding skills, but for the rare and important expertise of understanding the community from the inside. If they were all reassigned, you possibly could have gone away with solving the wish list by saying, now every team will have someone who understands and prioritizes the community. Certainly, every last one of them could have given you a useful answer if you had asked, hey, do you think the editors will mind if we dissolve the wish list and lay off the community tech team? It worries me that the Wikimedia Foundation evidently employs many people who cannot answer that question. I'm aware that many Wikimedia Foundation employees are also volunteers, but I am concerned that their effort and expertise as volunteers is not appropriately valued. The Wikimedia Foundation would not need to spend so much time wondering what the community wants if they appropriately valued this expertise. So someone says, I disagree calling this a failure in communication because evidently firing the people who are organizing a union is not something that happens randomly. And there's a really, really wrong comment about how the wish list could be better by someone who understands these things better than I do. And her reply to this is seconding that it is shocking that so many tools that are critical to certain editorial workflows have no clear owners, which is something that the community tech team would help maintain. Somebody else pointed out the list of tools left behind and that the foundation isn't following its own procedures on reworks, which state that it has to be transferred to another team as part of the rework process. So the entire preferences system, including global preferences system, unmaintained, watchlist expiry, watchlist labels, a feature that was in active development, article wizard workflow, syntax highlighting, page assessments API, template wizard for 2010 wiki text, edit recovery feature, various tools like page views, SVG translate, who wrote that, Xtool, copy patrol, the community tech bot that did various tasks like notify about commons file deletions. They said that compiling this list, it's hard to understand who was exactly helped by this reorg, and it is very easy to understand the people who end up thinking that this was done out of malice. While internally, there might have been some updates in regards to who's maintaining some of these tools above, not reflected on the maintainers page yet. It is hard not to jump to conspiracy theories when, from the outside, the situation is that the entire team of experienced developers and maintainers was disbanded for, at best, procedural reasons, all the while they were actively working on developing new features. And the original update about it talked about the team like they were some dictators pulling the whole dev cycle into a stranglehold by forcing everyone else to cooperate with them, which, if anything, would have been a requirement. You put yourselves there, not something unchangeable about the whole process. The more you think about the situation, the more maddening it feels. Who's going to continue development of watchlist labels? Are you going to bring in new developers, or is that feature canned entirely? What kind of mess have we found ourselves in, and where a group of employees is being asked to develop something for months, and then they get fired en masse while they are developing it? The Wikimedia Foundation higher-ups really don't see how badly this all looks and how badly it reflects on them, continue to talk what are essentially corporate platitudes while the community notices these obvious issues. I have another response on the 24th of May, so last Sunday evening. This is the most recent update we've had from the CTO. And it's basically a variation of the same response. People poke holes in it because it doesn't answer the questions that they actually want to know. people ask why Jones Day, a major law firm known for union busting, is on their payroll. Someone speculates is that it's just because they're a major law firm, but we don't receive any confirmation that they're not hired for those reasons. Someone gives the possible innocent explanation that the reason Comtech was disbanded was because nobody included it on the annual plan, which would have been a very out-of-touch decision. But if that's what the cause is, I mean, like, they would be doing themselves a lot of good by admitting that. Because, again, any explanation other than we were not union busting and we are only slightly out of touch would be better. All right. So I'm gonna go back to NWiki. Same kind of holes that people poke. I quote a pattern that tends to happen whenever the Wikimedia Foundation does something controversial. And I offer a solution 8 days ago that would have helped prevent this from exploding into even more of a crisis. I said that they should acknowledge that this is a massive mistake instead of sidestepping the issue, insisting that this is something the community wants when it clearly doesn't. People should get their jobs back, that the enforcement of NDAs shouldn't be applicable, like those terms should be revoked. More staff and resources should be directed to the team that's doing unimaginably important work, and that better working conditions should be ensured somehow and not just in vague promises that are never followed up on. My voice is starting to get tired, and my computer is starting to die. So the only other thing I would cover if I had the time, but currently don't, is to just really encourage people to read what is going on Jimmy's talk page, or how he responded to this initially. I'm going to be very busy the next few days with like medical appointments and stuff. This whole thing has stressed me out so much. I've had nightmares. It's not good. And I just wish the things didn't have to be so drastic for people to pay attention. Like, it's clear that what the community is asking for here is not impossible, even if people at the top seem to think that it is. Yeah. But I don't think they'll ever realize internally, like, that this is, yeah. Because I've tried to have discussions like this in internal places, and past a certain point, it's like, this clearly isn't working.